Jeff Deaver, author of the new Bond book, Carte Blanche. What's it like as an author to get a crack at James Bond?
When I was 8 years old, I read my first James Bond novel. And you may think that's a little bit young, but in fact, you know, they were, back in the 1950s, the books were kind of euphemistic. We cut away before the romance scenes. The violence was off camera. And as an 8-year-old, boy, this was just so exciting for me. He was an adventurer. And so about a year and a half ago, when the Fleming estate contacted me and said, would I be interested in writing the next continuation Bond novel, I debated 5 seconds and said, I'm on board, I'm your man.
How powerful is the Bond franchise? Not just the movies, but the books.
1 in 5 people on Earth have seen a Bond movie or read a Bond book. That's an astonishing figure. It is really an icon of American, British thriller fiction. Bond is, you know, he may have his personal faults. He may drink a little too much, may chase a few too many women, drives his car a little too quickly. But when it comes to his mission, he's very focused. His job is to protect the innocent, do whatever he needs to do for the country, his allies. And I think that kind of streamlined heroism, no moral ambiguity, is what people crave.
So how does your Bond compare with Fleming's Bond, as well as the on-screen Bonds?
What I decided to do was to update my Bond. My idea is to create a book that moves like a rocket. You're not going to pick up a Deaver book and read a chapter and then say, well, that's interesting, I'll get back to it at some point. If you like thrillers, you're going to pick it up and read it in one sitting. That seems to be the results of what I'm reading in my emails about Carte Blanche. Now, when I sat down and created Bond, I knew I wanted to put him into that story, which meant a modern day story set in 2011. Bond is a young agent. I want the story to be a bit of a roller coaster, but I need to bring the Bond from the original books and the films into a recognizable form so that the millions of fans around the world are going to appreciate that character. So it was I did a typical amount of research for the book. I ended up with about 4,000 or 5,000 pages of notes and research material that I put into the book. But it was very important to make Bond recognizable and yet the story a bit different from what Ian Fleming wrote. So the Bond from the original creation and the films is now in a Jeffrey Deaver story. The poor guy, he doesn't get a minute's rest.
And how do you update Bond with regard to the economy? Because things have changed since the Cold War and he was fighting Spectre and Smersh.
Yeah, the original series of books that Ian Fleming so wonderfully created, it was a different time then. Bond would think nothing of living a very luxurious lifestyle, and what amounted to a salary at the time, it was about 1,500 pounds, that's 1950s currency, so roughly $24,000, $30,000 today. He's not going to live that way anymore. So I had to play a bit with the troubled economy at the moment, because Bond still lives a nice lifestyle, but we did things like he had inherited a fair amount of money when his parents died. He was an orphan, a lot of people don't know that, and that money was in a trust fund. When he became 21, then he could afford his Bentley car. He didn't just happen on one. He didn't take that out of civil service economy. An interesting aspect of the financial world, though, is that we find Bond in Dubai, a place I've been to several times. I find it a fascinating culture and fascinating location. Well, Bond comments, and this may be a bit of my financial background, being a Wall Street lawyer some years ago. Bond comments how the economy has affected the climate in Dubai, and that it is now, having taken quite a hit, primarily in the real estate real estate market a few years ago, Bond finds that it is now kind of an intriguing place where entrepreneurs are coming to sort of start over. And it's a hotbed of a lot of, I'm not saying any of it's illegal, but it's just a lot of hustlers trying to get business deals done. And having had a background in that subject, I found it fascinating to be there. In fact, Bond gets into a little bit of trouble, not financially, he's almost killed, but with an entrepreneur down there who's come up with a very, very clever idea, and he doesn't want anybody to mess with it.
Well, finally, you just said that Bond drives a Bentley. Now, I thought he drove an Aston Martin, and in the book, you have him drinking whiskey not a
Yeah.
shaken, not stirred vodka martini. What's going on there?
Well, I had to do my research. I happen to love bourbon. I'll have to be honest with you. A martini does make an appearance in the book because it has to, of course. But no, he's a bourbon drinker. Coincidentally, so am I. Somebody had to do the research. But as far as the Bentley, he did, in the first books, he drove a Bentley. Speaking of the economy, the Aston Martin he drove in the original books was from the carpool at the British Secret Service. Imagine what would happen if a CIA agent or FBI agent was seen driving around in the government company car that was an Aston Martin or Bentley. I think that's another sign of the times.
Deaver, Jeff Deaver, thanks for coming on.
Greg, thank you so much.